Thank you, fellow speakers. Thank you, legislators who have been bold and offered to sponsor this bill and voted for it in 2007. Our roster of support is increasing. We are optimistic that it's going to pass this year. We appreciate the help that everyone has contributed to this most worthy cause. If there are any questions that members of the press may have, either Dick or I or other members of the panel will try to answer them, and if we can't give you answers, we will try to get you the answers. So the meeting is now open for questions. Thank you.
As a doctor, doesn't this, as one who tries to save people's lives and cure them, isn't this the opposite of that?
The question is this the opposite of saving and curing lives? This is a very frequently asked question and relates to the Hippocratic Oath. It goes back several thousand years. Over the centuries, this Hippocratic Oath has evolved, and as an example, the University of Vermont College of Medicine's Doctor's Oath, which our new doctors take, has nothing to say about the necessity to prolong suffering.
Okay, so the answer is no.
I think it has nothing to do that is a violation of the doctor's creed to help his patient.
Where does the American Medical Association stand on this?
The American Medical Association, like many organizations, do not support this movement. On the other hand, many of the members of the AMA, many members of the Vermont Medical Society, which as an institution has wanted no action. Individual members, the men and women who are taking care of our dying population, do want to have this place.
Are there provisions in this that would ensure that this wouldn't be abused by people or by people who are looking to take advantage of elderly people, for example?
I think this is a common question. How about abuse? The Oregon law clearly states that if there is any evidence of coercion on the part of family members, that the process cannot go on. And who makes these decisions? The attending doctor, the personal physician of a dying patient, is asked if he or she feels there is any evidence of coercion. If the answer is yes, the process stops. If the answer is the patient is mentally competent and able to make and communicate a decision for himself, then the process goes on and the patient must make 2 oral requests and a written request. The individual who signs the written request must also attest that the patient is mentally competent, is not being coerced, is acting voluntarily, and knows the likely outcome of the procedure that he wishes.
Doctor, why this issue now? It's been around for 10 years. What is the change that makes you confident this is actually going to pass and become law?
I think the issue is before us now because it didn't pass 7 years ago, 3 years ago. And it's an issue which has ongoing value and merit to the vast majority of Vermonters. We are hopeful and optimistic that enough legislators will sign on, more and more are signing on, and that we will be able to pass the law this time. I think major legislation takes time, and as Dick Walters knows, who founded this organization, he's been at it for 10 years. Many of others have been at it for 8 years. We feel we are making progress. We think, at the very least, the discussions that we're having are opening up discussions which are vital at the end of life, and we're optimistic that patients will have this choice by the end of this legislative session.
You talk a lot about also, just to add to that, from someone who was involved with legislation years ago, is the demonstration case in Oregon has shown that it works. Shown that across the board it has worked. And there's nothing like an experience like that in a state that actually has similar kinds of values to Vermonters in terms of wanting those individual freedoms to show that it does work, to give people the confidence that there would not be abuse.
You talk a lot about choice, but I think what some opponents of the bill are going to say is there may be some cases where the person is going to feel pressure from their family, and they may not report it as abuse, but they're going to have this sense of, I'm a burden on my family, I'm running up huge financial bills, What about that argument that there's some pressure coming and how folks deal with that?
Well, I think there are a couple of responses to that. One response would be, you mean to say that the avaricious granddaughter wants to get her grandmother's money 2 weeks early? That we're not dealing with a long period of time. We're dealing with patients whose days are very, very limited, and we're not really significantly shortening the patient's life. In the vast majority of instances, what we are doing is increasing the quality of life. And if any of the doctors feel that there is coercion, then they do not sign on to the process.
Who do you expect to oppose the bill?
Well, I think historically the political arm of the Roman Catholic Church has been in opposition. I think organizationally some of the disabilities groups are opposed to the bill. But we also know that individuals with disabilities are no different than those of us who don't have disabilities. And a majority of folks with disabilities as individuals want to have this choice. And we want us to have this choice. We want them to have the choice. We want somebody who has a disability to have the same safeguards as you and I have.
So there's been a lot of talk of Oregon. Is that the only other state that has adopted the
Good question. The question is Oregon the only state? The answer is no. Oregon in 1994, by referendum, passed this legislation 51% to 49%. But it didn't actually get implemented until 1997, when a second referendum designed to kill the 1994 referendum was introduced. And the 1997 referendum said, yes, we want the 1994 referendum to be wiped out. And in 1997, 60% of Oregonians wished Oregon law to remain in place. In 2009, the state of Washington, also by referendum, passed the death with dignity law, which is basically the same as the Oregon law.